Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. So if you want a successful garden, then you got to do this. I'm going to share my tips with you today for what you've got to do to prepare yourself for a really good growing season. Deciding on where you're going to grow is absolutely key. For me, I've got quite a big growing area behind me, and I've got this new growing area that I prepared last year. This is where I'm going to be growing a lot of my tomatoes and stuff this year. So what I've done with this is I've turned this into a nice defined growing area, because what I want to do is this year I want to make a nice concrete path down here. I want to fix this old path. So this concrete path, it's in a bit of disrepair, it's wobbly, it's got a lot of cracks in it. So what I want to do is I want to refurbish this. I want to put down a new layer of concrete and get this into a nice shape. I had a problem when I took the fire surround out of my house. I had this fire surround that was completely, because of the way I'd taken it out, I'd cracked a few pieces, and so I couldn't sell it. It wasn't useful for anyone else. So what I've done is I've used that to give myself a nice defined growing area. I've given myself a nice border here, and once I've put the new path down and given this a lick of paint, it's going to look absolutely awesome. And I've prepared it into one large bed rather than individual raised beds. Because I've invested in the soil, I don't need to build up my soil anymore. When I started this garden, I was on really heavy clay, really thick yellow sodden clay. You know, it was really nasty. Once you got past the yellow clay, it was blue and smelly, that sort of really nasty stuff. Now I've turned that into really fine, friable soil. Now what I've done is I've prepared this soil so much that you can actually now just dig down into the soil with your hands, and that's pure soil. Look at that. It's all perfect growing medium. And that's what we're about. We're about building soil. And even though a lot of farmers wouldn't class what I started on as, anywhere near grade 3 agricultural land, I've turned it into some really precious material. We've got at least a foot of topsoil now. And I've shown you how I use deep mulches to prepare my garden beds. So come on, let's go and have a look at what I'm doing right now. So back to this bed. If you have a look at this bed, it looks quite messy at the moment, and there's reasons for it looking messy. Look, I had this area with a big drop, so there's a big gap where there's no soil at all. So what I've been doing is I've been filling it with kitchen scraps, dead plants. So these are all my squash plants. I've just shoved them in here. So I've got more dead plants that I'm going to chuck in here. I've got more kitchen scraps that I'm just going to throw into this gap. And we'll just cover this whole area with wood chips. I'll keep adding more wood chips until I've got a nice level area here. By the time it comes to planting time in spring, that'll have broke down enough, and I'll have a beautiful medium to grow my plants in. So if I grow tomatoes or something in here in a straight line, that's going to be absolutely awesome because of the way I'm preparing the soil now. Last year I grew a lot of squash in this bed, and I grew sweet corn over in that area where that potato bucket is. And because I did that, it's taken a lot of nutrients out of the soil. So what I'm going to do on this bed is I'm going to concentrate on putting nutrients back into the soil. So if you notice, I've spread manure across the top of the bed. I'm waiting to go and collect some more. I'm just going to spread it over the top. I'm not going to dig it in. I'm just going to leave it, put some cardboard over the top, and the worms will do all the work for me. Where I've got this patch of hay, this is all used chicken bedding, and what I've got there is all I've got is my garlic planted underneath. So you can see the garlic starting to pop its head up. So hopefully in the next few weeks before this whole area freezes, this will all turn into, I'll have some lush garlic plants established, ready for the winter to come in. They won't be too tall for them to be battered by the winter, and they won't be too small for them not to get through winter very well. But it's still plenty of time to get your garlic in. I'd say if you haven't planted your garlic, get your garlic in now, because it's such a long-term crop. It just needs that long growing season. So do it now and invest in your future. As you know, I grow a lot of my potatoes in wood chips. So what I've been doing at the moment is I've been preparing my wood chip beds already. It's nowhere near time to plant my potatoes yet, but I'm bringing my wood chips down. I'm spreading them into the area that I want to grow in. And I'm preparing my wood chip bed, my potato bed, now while it's quiet, before the season gets in and it just gets too crazy to do stuff. It's a good opportunity to get everything set. If you're wondering why I'm digging this ditch now, look, as soon as I go a little bit down, you know the amount of rain that we've had. We've had the wettest November on record, and my wood chips are still dry at the bottom. So that means that the water's not penetrating the soil. It's great if you're on a waterlogged area and you want to prevent your soil from taking up too much water. But what can happen to us is we can end up with a drought situation. Last year, it was one of the hottest summers on record, and we struggled without water. We really struggled without water. So when I'm putting down thick layers of mulch like this, there's something that I am doing. So I've just dug that hole. I've got another hole already dug here, and I've got another hole dug already here. So what that does is it allows water to penetrate into the soil. So it's just like putting in little swales. It's just like putting in water catchment areas. So now that will allow the water to penetrate into the soil and hold that water into the soil, because that's what you don't want to do. Is remember what mulch is absolutely fantastic for, is mulch is great at locking water in, but it's also good at locking water out. So if you don't allow water to penetrate in, then you're just going to end up with a worse situation where you can't where you can't get the water into the soil. So if you're going to prepare your garden with deep mulches like I'm doing, this is a great thing for you to do. And if you want to know how I prepare my garden or how I prepare my wood chip beds, go and have a look on some of the other videos that I've done specifically on growing wood chip potatoes. So I had a huge session a couple of weeks ago and I got all my garlic planted into the ground, and that's got manure, it's got compost, and then it's got the cardboard cover it, and it's got something growing in there. Now where I'm harvesting things and I'm not growing stuff, like my old potato bed and my old squash bed from last year, let's go and have a look at them. This is amazing. Look at this. I want to show you this. I'd not actually noticed this until now. But what I've done is I'd put down loads of manure on here, and I'm just looking at it now, and you see these little mounds on the ground, like this one here. This is all pure worm castings. So what's happened here is the worms are really doing their work. They're pulling that manure into the ground, and this is the debris left over from their poo and from the tunnels that they're digging out. So absolutely amazing. It's working out absolutely fantastic. Like with the other bed, we're taking some of our kitchen scraps, and this is predominantly onions and eggshells and a few things like that, and we're just spreading that across the surface. I am going to do another manure collection, so that's why I haven't covered this yet. But once I've done that, I'm going to spread one more bag of manure on each of these beds. And when I talk about bags, this is what I'm talking about. This is the amount of manure that I'm talking about. Come here. So this sort of bag, that much-ish sort of manure, that's a really good one. I'm going to save that. I'm going to rot that down to turn into feed. But that's the amount of manure I'm going to spread on each one of these beds, and then I'm just going to cover it with a layer of wood chip or cardboard. If you haven't got wood chip or cardboard, then cover it. Now is a great time to be collecting leaves, so cover it with leaves and just allow it to just sit and rest over winter, and you'll see the worms. Because of that coverage, it's going to be warm enough for the worms to be doing their magic. And I'm really impressed with how many worm castings I can see on the surface of this. I'm really happy with that. Do you know what? I didn't notice it before I started filming this video, and that's really made me happy. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So, like I said, when I started off this garden, I started off on really thick soil. So I raised my ground level up, and I raised each bed. All of these beds were actually quite high up compared to the soil level. But what I've been doing over the last few weeks is, because I've managed to get my hand on a lot of wood chip, is all my old grass paths are getting covered. There's a number of reasons that I've done this, and I've talked about it before, but I'm covering all of these, wood chip paths. I'm turning all of my grass paths into wood chip paths, and it's just going to save me on that mowing, and it's just going to make it a little bit safer for my mum to come down here. I was a big fan of having grass paths, and I still am a big fan of having grass paths. I'll do a detailed video on it if you want me to. why I've switched from grass paths to wood chips. If you want that video, let me know and I'll do it. From now on, I'm just going to allow the beds to flow into each other naturally, and wherever our walking path is, that's going to be our new path. So wherever we sort of walk, we're going to just turn that into our footpath. We don't need to have this 4 foot wide path. We can just create some more growing space. But back to what I was saying about now being a perfect time for free resources is, look, I raked this up earlier and this is all leaves. Weeds? Okay, I've got loads of leaves here that I'm collecting. So I've got a nice pile of leaves. And any leaves that I have on the path, I pick them up. They're fair game. Any leaves on my lawn, they're fair game. If you've ever had problems with things like bug eaten or apples, from codling moth, rake your leaves up from around the base of the apple tree. I haven't done a great job because I've left the ones under the gooseberry bush, but I'm raking all this up. I'm raking all the apple leaves up around the pear trees as well. And I know it's still not too late to put on grease bands. It's one of the many things that's on my list. But all these leaves that you can collect now, absolutely awesome. Because this video is about investing now for your future, then there's two things that I really like doing with leaves like this. Over here, I've got a bag of leaves and grass that I've collected up. And look at that. It's all breaking down lovely in here. It's breaking down really nice. You can see steam coming off it. There's lots of fungal development. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Be careful not to breathe those fungal spores in because they can give you a chest infection. So all these leaves that I've picked up, they're going in here. And this is a slow compost that I'm making. It can take about 6 months to a year to make. This has been one of the things that's been on my list all year, to redo my compost piles. Now I want to clear this area out, and once I clear this area out, I'm going to shove my compost piles under here, and then we get that protection from the elements with this tree. Back to this is build your compost now. Really focus on building your compost now, because you're going to be getting loads of material from plants that you're pulling up, plants that you're cutting down, shrubs that you're cutting down. Look, I've got raspberries that overgrown raspberries that I've trimmed out. They're all going on there. Chili plants, my courgettes, beans, they're all going on there. I'm going to set the pile up now, and I'm not going to turn this until towards the end of winter, early part of spring. While there's not much going on, now's the time to get everything prepped. A lot of people think that gardening starts when you start sowing seeds, but gardening starts now when you're working to prepare your soil. It's taken me a number of years to get this soil to where I want it to, but I'm at the point now where I can pretty much plant a seed anywhere I want to and it'll grow. So back here, I've got all my flower beds that need trimming back. I mean, the nasturtiums still look strong, man. They look absolutely awesome. Fantastic plant, I love it. But over here, this is where we had loads of flowers, but we mix our flowers with our vegetables. So we've got kohlrabi and stuff growing in the middle of our flowers, and we've got poppies, we've got sunflowers, we've got onions, everything growing together. And you can do that. If you're tight on space, think about mixing your vegetables and your flowers up together. There's going to be a number of benefits from that. And one of the big benefits is you're going to get reduced pests. If you're struggling on spaces to grow, think about how you can maximise garden space. I've got this space behind the back of my greenhouse, sheltered. It's where I had loads of logs dumped and loads of stuff dumped. I've got a compost pile in here that I need to harvest compost from. But it's good growing space. I mean, it's a good amount of land. It's perfect for additional growing. So I'm going to harvest that compost. I'm going to get this area all cleaned up, find out what's useful, get rid of what's not. And then I'm going to start turning this into real, I'm going to turn this into a new growing space. And again, if we go back to my container garden, now this bathtub is where I'm going to be growing a lot of vegetables again for next year. And you saw me do it with this container here. And I'm doing it again. I'm doing it with this container. So I've got loads of kitchen scraps that I'm just dumping in here. Plants that I'm pulling out. And I think a couple more buckets of kitchen scraps on there, and that's going to be ready to cover up. I want the soil level. You can see how much the soil level's dropped. I want to get the soil level right to the top. So I'm going to chuck a couple more buckets of kitchen scraps on there, and then I'm going to cover it with old potting mixes. So anything that I've used before to grow in, that's what's going to be covering it. And then I'm just going to cover it with cardboard, and I'll cover it with something to protect it from getting washed out through all the rains and stuff. I'm continuing from the theme of the last video, why it's a good time to start gardening, and this is one of the ways of how to get your garden prepped. So really invest now for next year's growing season. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe for regular updates. If you'd like to support me on Patreon, then that's a fantastic way to support our channel, and I'll see you on the next one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.